Hello everyone, I am Param. I scored 98.4 2 years ago in 2023, and in this video I am going to be covering the other 1/2 part of maths, which is how to write your answers. This video will contain how to write your answers in the perfect way possible for full marks, how to revise before the paper, and how to exploit the examiner's psychology so that you can score full marks without even knowing the answer. Yes, you can actually score marks without knowing the answer to a question. I have done it in science, so I know. So this video will be divided into 5 parts. The first part will contain how to revise. The second part will contain basic tips and tricks for the paper. Third part will contain how to exploit the examiner's psychology basic. Fourth will contain the advanced tips and tricks for the exam. And the fifth will contain how to exploit the examiner's psychology advanced version. So let's first start off with revision. How to revise. In the previous video, I told you to make a formula book and make a hard questions notebook. If you haven't watched the previous video, go to my channel and watch the series that is going on. So first, how to revise the formula book? Well, time yourself. Take 5 minutes ka timer. Take a timer of 5 minutes and you have to write every single formula or remember every single formula in those 5 minutes without looking at the formula book. So keep a plain sheet of paper in front of you and try to write all the formulas under 5 minutes. This is called active recall, but yeah. Secondly, to revise the hard notebook problems, you first need to read the solution or whatever you want to do, or you need to solve it. But the third thing is hide the question and actually read the solution and try to form the question yourself. This will show you how questions are actually formed and how you can actually approach a question very easily. So read the solution and then try to reverse engineer the question from the solution. That wraps up our advanced level of revision tactics. Basic you have heard everywhere, so I'm not going to cover them. Now let's start off with basic tips and tricks. First of all, when your paper starts, you have to read all the questions and actually mark which questions you want to do under 5, 6, 7 minutes. So first 5, 6, 7 minutes of the reading time, try to just flip over the pages, read all the questions and decide which ones you want to mark and which ones you want to attempt. Then in the reading time that is left, which is about 7, 8 minutes or 10 minutes, you need to attempt all the MCQs you can. Yes, orally attempt the MCQs and then write the answers later. You can actually do a lot of MCQs orally if you have practice maths. Also, to recheck if your MCQ's answer is correct, you can always input the options into the question. I'm damn sure you already knew this, but I wanted to make a statement about this so that we can move forward. Now, if you do not know the answer to a question, jo aata hai likh do. If you remember anything even remotely related to that question, just write it. Whether it's a formula, it's a diagram, anything given to prove, at least if you know the statement, write it, because that can get you 1 marks, 2 marks as well for partial understanding. Since CBSE wants us to succeed, they will give those marks. I am not talking about your pre-boards though. In your pre-boards, they might not be giving you marks because your teachers check this paper and they check this paper thoroughly. CBSE does not check the paper thoroughly. And we'll come on to that later, okay? How to actually tackle 4-marker questions. 4-marker questions, you have to break them down into parts and then solve those parts. Sometimes the 4-marker questions look very, disguised to look at, like 4 statements, 5 statements. You have to break them into parts and then try solving them. And finally, the last 15 minutes of the paper at least should be reserved for checking the units and if the diagrams are labeled or not, and things like this, because I scored 99 in maths and this is a step that I did not do. I did revise in the paper, but I did not revise the units and labeling and etc. That is why I believe I lost that 1 mark in a silly mistake. Now that wraps up our basic what to do in the paper. Now let's move on to the basic psychology on how to exploit the examiner's brain. Before I start off with this, I want to tell you what actually happens when someone checks your paper from boards or CBSE. First of all, the examiner is giving a deadline that you need to check at least 20 papers in 1 hour. You need to check 20 papers in 1 hour. So they basically get about 3 minutes to check your questions. In your pre-boards or in your school ke papers, the teacher takes at least 10 minutes to read it thoroughly. In 3 minutes, maximum 5 questions can be read thoroughly. And so they do not actually read your answers fully. Okay, so that is what we are going to be exploiting. They will not actually, sit down and try to fully concentrate into your paper. No, they just skim your paper, looks right, and that's it. And that's how we can exploit this mentality. Paper is neat and aesthetic. If your paper is actually neat, if your handwriting is actually good, then this creates a bias into the examiner's paper that this might be a topper's paper. Examiners hate hunting for answers, and examiners hate, because I literally told you, right, they only get like 3-4 rupees a paper, so they will not obviously want to. ये लिखा क्या है? What is this written? They do not want to do this. That is why you need your paper to be neat and aesthetic and not to be jumbled. It should be very clear to the examiner on what you're trying to write and what in which order you have written it. Let's move on to the cream part of this video, the advanced tips and tricks. First of all, you must have heard about CBSE sample paper. I'll tell you about it. CBSE sample paper is deliberately made harder than the actual paper, so you do not need to worry about it that okay, I can't solve this. But what you do need to actually consider is the CBSE sample paper is not important, but the answer key attached to that sample paper is very, very important, because this same answer key will be replicated inside your paper. Answer key is the marking scheme by which examiners actually check your paper. This is the most important thing, and so CBSE already provides you the answer key for this year's paper by actually giving you the sample paper's answer key. So if you do not solve the sample paper as well, no problem. You shouldn't as well, but you need to look at the answer key at least once, twice. You need to look at it so that you can actually write the answers CBSE wants and get full marks, even if you do not write it completely. There's one more hidden tip. CBSE actually takes questions from pre-boards of top schools. So if there is a question which students have most struggled in pre-boards of top schools, CBSE will actually take that question from that paper and put it in their paper, in the maths paper that you are going to give. So if you can, please go ask your teacher to ask for the pre-boards of at least top 5 schools of your area, and that way you can actually ensure that if any question is intersecting in all those papers, it has the maximum chance to repeat in the actual boards. And genuinely, I did not know about this tip. If I did, I could have scored better. And this thing has never been discussed before on YouTube or anywhere. Now comes the tip that I advised your seniors as well. Once you've actually done the paper, or at least like 2 hours into the paper, you need to go for a washroom break. You need to go to the washroom, wash your face, chill for 2 minutes so that you can refresh your mind and actually rewind your mind. Then go back to the paper again and solve with a fresh mind. This actually helped me a lot when I did this in my boards, because I did it for every single paper, and it will help you a lot as well. For the derivations and long answers, you need to remember the bookish language to actually solve them. Because the main problem that students face in these questions is steps kha jate hain. They are missing some steps and you do not want to do that. So for the long answers which are actually given in NCERT Exemplar or NCERT itself, you need to memorize that solution. If you do not want to memorize that solution, that's okay. But at least remember the blueprint of the solution so that you do not, miss it in the exams. Like especially if there is an irrational numbers route, you need to memorize the solution very well. So in case it comes in the exam, you can write the direct bookish explanation and get full marks. And now we come on to the final part of the video that you have actually never heard of, the advanced how to exploit the examiner's psychology. We have 3 points in this, and the first one is going to blow your mind. So the first one is that your paper is checked by multiple people. You already know this, right? CBSE has a lot of people who are checking the same paper. Once a junior checks it, then a senior teacher, then another senior teacher, and then the paper goes away. But what you do not know is the paper that the senior checks is not actually your paper. It contains only the questions that the junior has flagged for being wrong or something like that. Now, if you actually write a 5-marker solution for a 3-mark question, or actually write lengthy and detailed answers, then the junior won't risk flagging that question. Do you know why? Because first of all, they want to, make their image better in the senior's mind. Second, CBSE has an option if you want to actually, reevaluate your paper. You can give your paper for revaluation by CBSE. So the juniors or seniors do not risk giving bad marks to unfair answers. Unfair answers, what I mean by that is lengthy and detailed answers, which could be argued as if you cut marks in this, it will be unfair. Let me sum it up for you. Basically, if you write more than the questions is asking, then you can appeal that your marking has been unfair, right? So the juniors and seniors or your examiners do not risk this. They will tick lengthy and detailed answers सामने देख के अगर उनको 2 steps दिख गए that they want, if they see at least 2 steps that they want, then they won't even read your whole answer. They will just take the answer and go away because they do not want to risk flagging and ruining the reputation or giving more workload on themselves for reevaluating the paper. Now let's talk about second point, which is benefit of doubt. This has 2 cases. One, if you actually explain the MCQ very well but you have written the answer wrong, means if you explain the MCQs working very well, but like let's say the answer is A, but you marked D, even though you gave the reasoning very well, you will still get marks because examiners will give you benefit of doubt for partial understanding. As I said, CBSE wants you to pass and succeed. We discussed this in this first and second video. So it will give you marks if you at least explain your point of view, even if your answer might be wrong. And this is what happened with me in science. I will come on to that when I upload the science answer writing video, but I actually got 100 in science by doing this. And the second thing is following the blueprint. What is the blueprint for construction questions? It could be constructing a triangle with this statement, or proving questions with given, to prove, hence proven. These things matter way more than you think. Do you know why? Because most people prove the questions on a time foundation. Okay, I have to prove it fast. Sin theta plus cos theta, and then just start. That's not what you should do. What you actually need to do is first write given. What is given in the question? To prove. The statement you need to prove. And let me tell you, if your paper has actually been good, the examiner won't even read further because they already know, okay, this guy knows knowledge, man, come on, given to prove, that is enough for me, and they tick the answer. So even if you do not know the answer to a proving question, at least write given, to prove, and then just write 2 random statements, and there is a chance you will get actually full marks. If not full marks, at least if that is a question for 4 marker, then you will actually get 2 or 3 marks easily. And lastly, we come on to the biggest part which no one has ever heard of as well. Examiner's fatigue. As I said, they have to check the paper in 3 minutes. So they check the first part of your paper very well and the last part of your paper very well, because the paper is starting and the paper is ending. It gives them the best impression of what will lie in the middle. So how to exploit this? Just write the tough questions in the middle. Think about it. If you actually do the easy questions in the first, and so you create a good impression, and do the easy questions in the last, it creates a good impression. So if there is some tough questions that you cannot tackle midsection, and it gets skipped. And this, genuinely, I never knew about this when I was doing boards. And if there's any senior who's watching this video, I don't know why, you do realize that this is one of the biggest tips ever. Now I'm not saying that you need to fully jumble your order, as we have already talked about it, but let's say एक section D or section C exist करता है. Let's say you have a question of section C, you have to do 4 questions, then include the toughest questions in the middle so that the examiner skips them and only skims them for the keywords. That's it. And now we have completed the whole thingy that I needed to do in this video, but some tips are gone unspoken, which I did not realize. So let me talk about them. 1. Box your final answers always. The examiner is trained to follow the blueprint, given to prove, final answer. That's it. That's what they want to follow. And in normal questions, it is formula, step, final answer. They'll take. So you need to box your final answer always. There is a chance that even if your steps are wrong, they will still give you marks looking at the final answer. And lastly, do not ever skip a step or a formula. Even the basic formula, even if you're using midpoint theorem or Pythagoras theorem, at least write it in the bracket Pythagoras theorem, or sin square theta plus cos square theta is equal to 1. These steps contain 1 mark, and these steps contain more than your calculation in terms of marks. So you always need to write every single step and every single formula involved in the question. Think of the examiner as a 5th grader, and you need to over explain every single thing to them, as we have discussed, lengthy and detailed answers. If you over explain things to them, then they will think, okay, this guy is intelligent, this guy knows a lot, tick. And that wraps up our video, tick. So in this video, this was very lengthy by the way, and this took me a lot of time to research as well. So I will very much appreciate if you subscribe. In the next video or day 5, we're going to be covering the science strategy for scoring full marks. If you haven't watched the previous videos, please go ahead, and thanks for watching.